everybody. Welcome here to the second race of the season in the NASCAR Chris Cup Series here on the Flatout Racing Network. We have gone from the East Coast to the West Coast. We are at Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California. Good evening, friends. Welcome to the race. My name is Chris Dollarden. Alongside me, Logan Brakey. We got in here right on time here as these guys are getting ready to take the green flag here for 80 laps around Auto Club.
Yeah, should be an exciting event this afternoon here around the very fast and very wide Auto Club Speedway. Very bumpy surface here this afternoon. Look for these drivers to try and take care of the right side tires quite a bit, as it tends to eat away at that right front tire.
As the pace car will pull off, the field will take the green flag. Chris M. Scott won the pole in the qualifying session. He will bring it down and will take the green flag. 80 laps of racing from Auto Club going right now here on FR. Scott, a very good start for him along the outside of Chris Otto in the 88, who did not get as good a start. Logan, you talked about it at the top, or excuse me, not quite yet. You haven't mentioned it yet. What's the line going to really be? This track is a really good track where you can run multiple lines around the racetrack. What's going to be the operative line for these drivers tonight at Auto Club?
Yeah, for the start of the race, before the track really takes any bit of rubber, it's going to be the bottom. Everybody's going to be fighting to get down against that white line and just get every inch they can from everybody else. These restarts here that we'll see all afternoon are going to be very aggressive. Like I said, it's a very wide racetrack, so this is the best chance to make up ground and pass guys. It is tough to pass here because it's so wide open and so one lane at the start. Once this track takes rubber, there's going to be more. That outside groove might start coming in a little bit, and you'll see guys using that maybe to make up some time.
Chris Scott off to a really good start tonight so far at Auto Club. He has led them all. Chris James has been able to slide into the second spot behind him in his number 29 Chris Weiser car. And Christian Antonio coming off of a solid finish last week at Daytona. So he's running third right now. Really good run for him. I want to go further back. I want to check on our race. Actually, you know what? I'm looking through here. And Adam Tevis, our winner last week at Daytona, did not start this race. He did qualify, but so he's not even in this race. So that's going to be a interesting note to take care of as down the backstretch they come. Chris James taking a peek to the inside here of Chris Scott, hoping to get the lead as they come through 3 and 4.
Yeah, battles all over this racetrack right now. As I mentioned, the restarts are going to be the most racy parts of this race. A little bit of contact there off of turn 4 between the 98 and 72. 72 of Chris Massey really got a good, or I apologize, the 72 of Chris Edwards, that is, got a really good run off of turn number 4, got into the back of the 98 there. But very racy here on the restarts, and we're going to see it continue to be pretty racy for a few laps here until the tires really start to fall off, Chris. And once those tires hit their fall off, we're going to see a very spread out pack here this afternoon.
Chris Edwards currently running in the 12th position as you're looking side by side with overhead view of Auto Club Speedway in beautiful Fontana, California. That is where we are tonight, going coast to coast, so a good swing for these drivers. But I honestly do not think that there's too much of a difference between Daytona and Auto Club due to how fast this track runs and then the amount of lines you can run. So we're going to see a lot of the same action, hopefully a good bit more racing this week compared to last week at Daytona. A lot of cautions, a very caution-heavy Cristona 500 that was won by Chris Adam Tevis. So far so good right now as Chris James is continuing to lead the field here on lap 5.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing too early on here is that a lot of guys have kind of really dropped out of the pack, perhaps to maybe save and take care of that right front, because what happens, Chris, when you're racing in the pack here is you really become very abusive on that right front tire, trying to maintain and chase down guys in that pack, really fighting for position on the top, and that really eats away at that right front. So I've noticed quite a few of these guys at the back, starting with maybe the 71 of Christopher Landy, kind of preserving his stuff and letting the run kind of go on. This is an 80-lap race. It's a long race at Auto Club Speedway. Let the run kind of carry out, and once these guys kind of get single filed and those tires start to go away, these guys at the back I think we're going to start seeing charging through the field and making their way to the front because they've done such a good job of taking care of their right front.
Up at the front, Chris James has a lot of, he has got his hands full, really trying to hold off the 97 of Chris Bass, who was fastest at one of the faster ones in practice, as Bass comes to the inside of Chris James here in his number 97 Chevy, and he looks to take the lead off of turn number 2, and coming onto the backstretch, he will. But man, James tried the crossover both ways, and it worked not to the inside, but to the outside, as they're still side by side heading to 3.
Gonna see a lot of that this afternoon. That outside line pulls so well, Chris, off the corners. Really tight off of turn number 4. 97 has to shut the door a little bit. We're gonna see a lot of that this afternoon, as I said, because you get such a good launch off the corners when you're on the outside. It's like a slingshot up there, so guys are really gonna be defensive whenever they're taking the lead here.
One guy that had a really good run there on the front straight, Antonio James, trying to get the second spot, may not have the run off the corner here as he got a little loose on exit as he slid into third place. Good run for him so far, and yeah, I've noticed too, it is spreading out quite a bit, about a pack of 8 cars up here at the front. So the pack's just really spreading out.
Oh, we're gonna on turn 3, Chris. Hard hit in turn 3.
Trying to figure out who that is. That might be Christopher Ritchie in the number 35 car, upside down.
Barrel rolling.
That was Christopher Ritchie. Can't quite tell who that is down there with him. That is the 72 of Chris Edwards. We talked about him a moment ago, as that has brought out our caution of the night here on lap 9 of 80. Chris Bass was the leader when they came around, as we're going to get set to go back to a replay in just a moment.
Looks like a case of guys just trying to go for the same line at the same time, and it just wasn't ever going to work. The 53, or excuse me, the 35, I apologize, Christopher Ritchie, as you mentioned, involved in that, taking the nose off the 72, and they both go for a ride there.
You see it here, entering turn 3, Christopher Ritchie, he came down really 70, almost had it saved. It looked like it. Oh my goodness, what a hard hit. It's almost a flat-out miracle that I don't think really anybody else got involved with that, as Ritchie, I think, avoided everybody, and then everyone avoided flipping Edwards.
Yeah, the 25 did hit got into the 35 of Ritchie pretty good there and expired his engine. The 25 of, let's see, of Christopher Salm.
That may be one thing I did not catch there. Christopher Salm also involved.
Yeah, he got a pretty good hit down there at the bottom, and his engine expired upon contact. So they do have a faster pair here this afternoon, though, Chris, as this is still technically a super speedway. So they'll have one faster pair that they are able to use. So all those cars that you saw involved in that wreck will continue on here this afternoon. So a lucky break for them in that regard.
As a lot of cars came down into the pits, as just about everyone did, except for about 6 cars. Most of the leaders came down. Chris Bass, Chris James among them. Chris M. Scott, our pole sitter, he came down as well. The cars that stayed out, on the other hand, would be the 42 of Christopher Williams, who's going to assume the race lead. Christopher Landy in second. Christian Shepard third. Chris Clifford Corriveau in fourth. Christopher Gears fifth, and Chris Newman sixth, as it looks like actually even maybe a few more cars even stayed out. The 89 of Christopher Bernard was the car that won the race off of pit road, so he's going to be the first of the cars that pitted. So, Logan, a 9-lap green flag run to open the race before that caution of a 3-car wreck involving the 72, 35, and the 25 of Christopher Salm. What did you gather from that first opening portion of the race?
Well, I mean, it was kind of what we expected. You know, it was very racy at the start. Guys trying to get as much track position as they can, especially the ones that maybe didn't qualify as well as they would have liked to. We saw the front, as you said, the front pack of maybe 7 or 8 cars or so were all extremely racy, trying to get out front and lead this thing for a little bit. I expect to maybe see the same thing again here on this restart, maybe a little dialed down, as guys are probably going to try and settle in and take care of their tires a little bit. And maybe expect a little bit of a longer run this time around.
A couple of cars that stayed out the first time around have come down, so about 4 cars now are going to be up here at the front when we take the green flag back. Christopher Williams, Christopher Landy, Christian Shepard, and Chris Newman. You mentioned Christopher Logan, that he was hanging out towards the back, hoping to avoid something, and whenever the wreck happened, he was able to avoid it, and now it's paying off, and now starting to enter a bit of strategy here. I don't know if it's the wisest thing to do, but it's still pretty early, as those front four are on 11-lap old tires and expired fuel, while everyone else has come down since then.
So on the restarts here, Chris, the new tires tend to be a little slick, and a little bit, your car tends to be a little bit on the loose side. So staying out on a little bit old tires isn't always a bad thing. I'm not sure what 11 laps will be. I don't think we ran a long enough run for there to really be a massive difference in the tire fall off. However, if this run goes on, say we start pushing around 15, 20 laps, I think you're going to see those guys that did stay out on the 11-lap old tires start to fall off a lot quicker than the guys that obviously took fresh tires on this caution.
It's a very good point with how this track is. It can heat up, and then especially during the day and under the hot California sun. So you got to think that's going to be a factor as well with the temps, as the pace car lights are out, which signifies we're going back to green on lap 13 of 80. If you're just joining us here on the Flatout Racing Network, you're watching the Chris Cup Series, second race of the season here at Auto Club. Last week, an incredible race at Daytona International Speedway, the Cristona 500, won by Chris Adam Tevis, who is not in this race, so that's something to watch out for, as we're going to definitely have a new race winner here today. Chris Dollard and Logan Brakey on the call this evening as the cars come through 2 and 3. Like we mentioned, 4 cars stayed out. Everybody else pit. So this is going to be very interesting to watch coming down to the start-finish line. Your top 10 as they run. Christopher Williams is first. Christopher Landy second. Christian Shepard will roll up third. Chris Newman fourth. Chris Thomas Faddis makes an appearance in the top 5. He's fifth. Christopher Bernard, the first off of pit road, 6th. Chris James 7th, Chris Bass 8th, Christian Antonio 9th, and the pole sitter, Chris M. Scott, will round out the top 10.
All right, pace car is going to be diving on the pit road here this time. And again, Chris, look for these guys to really fan out down here in 1 and 2. Try to get every spot they can on this restart for about 3 or 4 laps, and then look for them to maybe start settling in here.
Hoping for another good green flag run. We had 9 laps to open the race, as Christopher Williams will head down here to the restart zone, and he'll get us back. 68 laps to go when they hit the stripe, as Williams gets a really, really good jump on the rest of the group.
Somebody way back in the pack there, I believe it was Christopher Tate. I'm not sure if he jumped the restart or he was trying to get a last-second spot in line before we got to the start-finish line. I saw him pass a few cars on the outside there. It looks like it was just a matter of trying to get into his spot in line there last minute. He's going to split the middle 3 wide, a massive run out of turn 2 for that 9 car, shooting up inside that top 5.
A car that was just ahead of him, the 97 of Chris Bass, on those jump 2 as he split a few cars 3 wide heading down the back straightaway. He's currently trying to take 4th away from Chris Thomas Faddis. A couple cars way up the racetrack there, going through 3 and 4. But for the time being, Christopher Williams still managing the lead, as he'll come around and he will lead this lap. But here comes that fast number 97 of Chris Bass.
Yeah, and I think Chris Bass is showing us what those new tires can do versus those old tires. It looks like there is quite a bit of an advantage in the fall-off there between old and fresh tires. As he's looking to the inside of the 44, he's going to get a massive run off of turn 2, and down the back straightaway, he's going to look for the lead here entering turn number 3.
Don't know if he's going to be able to quite get the lead, but he can definitely get a run. Chris Light Shepard, as actually he is going to get that good run in to get to the inside of the 42, and he is going to clear the 42 off of pit road, showing how good you are on new tires compared to the old tires, as Chris Bass has reassumed the lead here at Auto Club.
Big push from the 9 to the 29 there down that straightaway. We're going to see a lot of that this afternoon too. Get that guy going maybe a little bit quicker than he's comfortable with, and in the corner try and get him up the racetrack. 29 holds it well though with those fresh tires. 29 and 9 back up to 3rd and 2nd. Chris
James, he had a really good run going at Daytona that was thwarted towards the end of the race in a crash at the end that eventually handed over the win to Chris Adam Tevis, in his 10 car at Daytona, looking for redemption this week at Auto Club. He's got to run down the 97, though, if he wants to have that spot, as the front four all on new tires, with the fourth car, Christian Antonio, hanging in there. But Christopher Williams doing an impressive job so far. These guys, Christopher Williams and Christian Shepherd, being able to keep themselves up in the top group for the time being on old tires.
And you can see, Chris, these guys up at the front, they kind of got a feel for it on the original start there, how brutal this track can be. Oh, got two cars spinning off of two. Looks like, I don't know, not sure the car numbers there.
Christopher Pernard, one of the cars involved, one of the cars that were up inside the top 10 after the pit stops as they spun down the back straightaway. 18
of Chris Cody Jenkins was the other one involved in that. Pretty harmless spin, I would say, Chris. A little bit damage on that 18. Nothing a little optional repair won't fix.
Yeah, a little bit of right rear damage to the 18 of Chris Cody Jenkins. I looked at Christopher Pernard. Looked like he just went for a spin, so he may have just flat spotted the tires on 7-lap-old tires. So he may be okay, but the big not benefactor, but the unfortunate thing here is for Chris Cody Jenkins, that little bit of right rear damage. We'll take you to a replay right now as to see what happened to the 18 and the 89 of Pernard.
Yeah, it looks like Pernard was just trying to make a run work on that top lane, and on these old tire, or excuse me, on the new tires, maybe not quite up to temperature just yet, and there's not a lot of rubber up in that top lane, and he just gets a little bit loose off of turn number 2. And just slides right down and into the 18, and the 18 is just an innocent bystander in that situation.
Nothing really the 18 could have done there. It looked like Pernard did a good job in containing. I mean, he has the safer barrier there to help him, but it looked like he did a good job of keeping it off the wall. So yeah, the 18 really couldn't do much there. The 89 just got loose, as you said, and that is why we are under our second caution of the evening here at Auto Club on lap 17 of 80. Another 2-car wreck, or another just small wreck, so we're catching some lucky breaks with how these cautions are falling, but you know, with how these guys run here at Auto Club, it's only a matter of time before we have a big one.
Yeah, and I think we'll see maybe that bigger incident happen a little bit later in the race. Everybody's just trying to figure their stuff out, see what's quick, kind of see what kind of strategies might play out. But I did notice again, up near the front, I think a lot of those guys kind of took some notes in that first run. They singled out pretty quickly on this second run and kind of were ready to just kind of ride where they were at and take care of their stuff. And now obviously under caution again. We'll see how that plays out on this next restart.
Cars came back down again to get fresh Goodyears on their race cars. 2 cars stayed out again, and it's 2 cars that stayed out the previous caution. Christopher Williams and Chris Thomas Mattis trying to play the strategy here. Those guys running on the tires they started this race with, while everybody else has decided to bring it down and get fresh fuel and tires. So this is very, very interesting strategy out of the 42 and 12 camps. What do you think is going on through the mindsets of those 2 drivers?
Well, I think it might be a situation of maybe they're just trying to get something as simple as good track position. They're trying to run up front as long as they can and bet on these cautions to continue to come out. And then maybe they can cycle back in with everybody and pit in with the entire field to get a brand new set of rubber after maybe a long green flag run of about maybe 15 to 20 laps. Maybe just try and get themselves back on cycle, get themselves some decent track position. Obviously, they won't have the short run speed that these guys on 4 tires will have, but definitely some sort of interesting strategy there, especially from the 42. He did start back in the 15th position, so he did want to. He's does look like he's trying to make up some ground there, starting about mid-pack. So bold call, but you know what? This is the time to make those bold strategy calls and see if it works out or not earlier in the race when it's a little easier to come back from mistakes like that.
You're absolutely right. Another car that stayed out under this caution is Christopher Pernard, the car that spun with the 18 of Chris Cody Jenkins. So an interesting move there. Thought he may have flat spotted the tires, but it looks like he wants to keep going. He's only on 9-lap-old tires, so it's going to be interesting to see how he runs. It was Christopher Tate that was the first car off of pit road in his Chris Know-How Chevy. So that's going to be the car to watch here on this restart when we do take the restart. I think we'll be coming to 1 to go this time by Chris Bass, Chris James, 2 cars that are really fast as well, up there in 5th and 6th. I'm also one thing we haven't pointed out yet, the lucky dog being a factor. Christian Heim Lane had I don't believe he took the green flag, but then came off a pit road once the guys got going. He's only a lap down, so we get another quick caution. He'll be able to get his lap back. And then I'm also going to point out Chris Edwards. I guess he used his one quick repair that he had in the wheel well, and he used it. He is 1 lap down and still in this race. So despite having that bad wreck at the opening part of this race, he's not quite done yet. So things to watch out for as this race progresses. Pace car lights are out on top of the pace car, signifying we're able to go to green at lap 21 of 80. A quarter of the race will have been completed with Christopher Williams out front. Now, Logan, I do want to ask you one thing we didn't get a chance to do at the top. I did this with Seth Cole Christopher Pierce last week, excuse me. Picking who has the best car and who has the best chance to win this race. Still really early in a race like this, but who do you think, from what we've seen in the first quarter of this race, has the car to really get it done today?
Well, I mean, you're right about it still being early. It's long run speed is usually what comes into the factor here at Auto Club whenever it comes to the best car, race winning car. But in terms of raw speed, we've seen a lot of it from that 97 of Chris Bass. So if this comes down to a short run restart to finish out this race, definitely turn your heads toward him to look to get it done. But don't count out some of the other guys that we saw up there later in that last run either. The 29 and the 9, for example. The 9 did pit, and he's going to be restarting deep in the field there. But quite a few of these guys up at the front do have some pretty good short run speed, so I'd look to them for now until we get a long green flag run.
Christopher Williams and Chris Thomas Faddis will lead us back to the green flag here on lap 80. Still early on, as we've been saying. A lot of action still to happen here today at Auto Club. Williams going to get on the gas with Faddis to his outside. Green flag flies as, oh, wow, Faddis spun the tires there on the start. And who's going to capitalize off of that? That's Chris Tate as the Williams car gets away at the start.
Yeah, the 9 was giving the 12 a really good push coming up to speed there, and that just really upsets the car. Oh, he's going to get turned. The 12's going to get turned. He saved it going into 1.
What a save by Chris Thomas Faddis. I'm trying to get to him here. There he is, Chris Thomas Faddis. What a save in a portion of a track that you struggled to save the car. He's going to fall back and pay the price for that. But way to go for Chris Thomas Faddis to prevent another caution from happening as Chris Tate has taken the lead on the exit of 4.
Well, we were unsure about the difference between old tires and new tires. I think we just saw it right there, the advantages we have. We saw the 9 push the 12 come into the restart, and that got him up out of the groove, and then we saw the 12 get run over again going into turn number 1 just because he was on such older tires than everybody else. So maybe this is a mental note for a lot of these drivers that maybe staying out on old tires might not be the play, especially if everybody behind you comes in and takes 4 fresh tires.
Chris Tate out to the lead. About 7 cars single file up there at the front. Christopher Williams trying to hold his by Chris James with those old tires. Christopher Williams definitely going to have a lot more fall off in that 42 Motor Chris Ford as Chris James takes that 3rd spot easily, as we may get a battle brewing up here between the 2 leaders, Chris Tate and Chris Bass. But I'm looking back here as well. A lot of action happening just on the exit of the top 10. Christopher Bernard on old tires. He was involved in that last caution. Under fire right now from the 99 of Chris Tim No, who I believe did not even take the green flag at Daytona. That's going to be interesting to watch as there they go. 89 around.
Oh,
big wreck on the back straightaway.
They're still wrecking, Chris. They're still wrecking.
Chris Cody Jenkins, Christopher Landy all mixed up in here. Chris Noblet back here as well. The 4, our pole sitter, Chris Scott, he was involved. You saw it right there. Those guys someone got really loose. I believe that was that got really, really loose off the exit, and then just all broke loose after that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it was I was watching the battle for the lead, and I saw out of the corner of my screen there I think as you said, the 89 again got loose. It might have been the 99 on the outside of him. Yeah, the 99 got loose on the outside of the 89. And it's the same situation as we saw last caution. Guys trying to run that top on new tires, and there's just no rubber, no grip down up there, so the car just snaps around on them.
We'll bring you to a replay here in just a moment. You saw it happen there, folks. As to what happened there, I saw the 99 come off the racetrack, and then the 89, he came up a little bit into him, but then the 99, nothing he really could do, as everybody else just kept on wrecking here. You see the 5, Chris Hubkunball, big hit for the 4 of Chris M. Scott, the 88 of Otto. He was involved. Everyone else was able to woe it up. I believe Chris Edwards is right there, as well as is Christian Heimlein. The 3 of Christopher Gears also involved. Lots of cars. I knew it was only a matter, and it happened on a wider portion of the track, but still, it allowed a big crash to happen here on lap 24.
It's the exit of the corner here, especially turn 2, is such a tricky spot when it comes to wreck avoidance. If there's trouble happening right in front of you, Chris, because the car tends to pull up towards that outside wall. You're in a lot of on throttle time in the middle of the corner. You're on the gas about center off, so the car is tracking up to the wall. And when something happens in front of you, it's really tough to get it woed up. Standing on the brakes often sends you spinning sideways, as we saw a few guys go. And it's so tough to miss a wreck off of turn number 2, especially when you're still coming up to speed.
Very unfortunate to have that happen in the first half of this race. We're going to try and get you an onboard here with the 71 of Christopher Landy here as to what he saw out his front window in his vantage point of this wreck. Everything happening up in front of him. He's right here behind Chris M. Scott, as everyone's just messing up in front of him, and boom, right there into the 5 of Chris Hubka, and then just avoided the 88. So a bit of damage to Christopher Landy's machine, as that just gave you a really good glimpse as to what went down in that wreck. Our third caution of the afternoon here at Auto Club Speedway. Chris James is your race leader now after all of that. Christopher Williams, another thing I want to point out, he has not pitted again. I believe Chris James stayed out.
That's shocking to me, actually, that Christopher Williams is continuing to stay out. But you know what, Chris, we've seen him manage his tires a lot better than a lot of these guys who have stayed out. He hasn't really been sluggish on these restarts. He's gotten up to speed fairly well, and he hasn't really gotten in the way like we've seen some of these other guys do. So as long as he feels like he's maintaining speed with these guys on the restarts, all the power to him to stay out with them. But I just think it's going to really catch him off guard when this race goes green if this race goes green for a long time. Those tires are going to fall off so much faster, and I think it's going to do more hurt than good for him in the long run.
You made an absolutely really good point that if we get into a long green flag run, that his strategy is not going to pay off. He's getting very, very lucky with these cautions happening so quickly that if he can just keep staying out and then hopefully catch a caution at the right point where he needs to come down pit road to get fresh tires and fuel, he's pitting with leaders, and that puts him just about on pace with everybody else. So he's really taking a big risk, but this is a case where it's high risk, high reward for Christopher Williams, and right now he's running second on 26 lap old tires. So that's very impressive, as you said, how Christopher Williams has been able to keep himself up front and up to speed with these leaders.
So we did see the 9 and the 97, our 2 race leaders at that last caution, did come to pit road, get 4 fresh tires. They know what kind of speed they have on these on the fresh tires, so they're going to continue playing those cards as long as they can because they know how quick they are. We saw them check out pretty good, and look for them to make a charge to the field here again, and we should see them battling back up at the front here very, very soon.
Christopher Tate is all the way back here in 21st, the last car on the lead lap, so it looks like he had some issues Chris Bass, the other car we mentioned, the 97, he's going to come up to this restart 10th. So he's still up there and factoring here. One car we haven't talked about tonight, he's running third. That's the National Chris Chevy of the 46 of Christopher Takas, or however you say that name. That's a very, very unique name to say. He's running third, so he ran at Daytona last week, had a good run, but hoping to replicate that here at Auto Club, and he's up in third right now. So interesting to see some guys like him up here. Also, Chris Massey is another one. Christopher Salm, he was involved in our first caution, and he's already made his way back up to fifth.
Yeah, a good rebound there for Solomon, the 25. As you said, he took that heavy hit on the inside from the 35, and he's made a good recovery drive, sitting up there in fifth, looking to get up on the wheel and get going here on this restart.
Chris James and Christopher Williams are going to be the front row as they come down. And we're going to get ready to go back green on lap 28 of 80, almost 50 laps to go. James is about to hop on the gas, 53 to go here at Auto Club here tonight, as he gets a really, really good jump, and Takis gets a good jump to move up to second.
Yeah, a really good launch for that 29 there, kind of get away, get a little bit of breathing room and get away from that 46. You want to do the best you can to get a good restart, so you have a few laps to kind of settle in and let your tires come up to temperature. You don't want to be racing anybody too hard too early.
Takis continues to run well in second. A little bit of battling happening back here between Salm and Christian Antonio. Salm trying to get the spot back, but right now Antonio has it as he is in fifth. Christian Shepard, another car that was playing that strategy a bit ago, he's worked his way into seventh after having to make his first pit stop of the night. As Williams they're showing that fall off starting to happen there for Antonio, as he is stuck on the outside, getting passed by Chris Massey, who's having a good run tonight. Up there in third in his Toyota, one of the few Toyotas that we have in this field of Chevy and Fords.
29 continuing to build his lead here on this restart. A really solid getaway here. And the bigger lead you're able to build, the easier you can drive your car, Chris, whenever you pull away like that and get a long run on Auto Club. And the easier it is, the fewer cars you have to worry about, the better. And that's exactly the situation Chris James is in right now for the time being.
He has opened up at least a second lead over Chris Massey, the new second place. Christopher Takas through turns 1 and 2 as Takas is falling way back right now as he's under fire by Christopher Salm, as he's been able to work his way back into the top 5 after the restart. Looking for our fast drivers. Chris Bass, he is still up in 10th, trying to run a little bit higher line in the middle groove, then drops down to the bottom, and it didn't matter. Christopher Tate restarted. He's already up in 11th, just knocking on the door of the top 10.
Yeah, it's a lot of speed right now on that 97 and 9 Chevrolet right now. It's I've been watching them come through this field on this restart, and as you mentioned, the 9 started as the last car on the lead lap in the 21st position, already up to the 11th position, and they both have a lot of speed under the hood here this afternoon. They're making quite a huge charge here through the field right now.
Chris Bass trying to get around Chris Roberts. Roberts finished second last week at Daytona. He's now running in 10th, still trying to battle Bass for the 9th position. A lot of action happening right now. Bit of a off-pace car of Christopher Williams, who's still out there on those old tires. That, as we said, that high risk, high reward. The high risk is starting to come in here for Christopher Williams. Soon he may have to make a decision to come down and pit under green, as it looks like the field is just spread out enough to where we may not even have a caution.
Whoa, Chris Bass through the middle, 3 wide. Sorry, Chris. What a move from the 97 off of turn number 2. Huge position gain for him.
Don't worry about that. I saw it too. Chris Bass, a really, really good run there down the back straightaway to be able to move up in spot, trying to get the 6th spot now away from Christopher Williams, and he takes it with Chris Otto. He was involved in our cautions just a moment ago. He's way on the apron, nearly 4 wide down the front straightaway, almost 5 wide going into 1, but Otto wisely backs out as that Williams car continues to experience the fall off that his car is having right now, and everybody else is just making him easy picking right now, as Chris Otto right now is just outside, or is actually in the top 10. But in the meantime, up at the front, Chris James just continues to put a clinic on the rest of the field as we're approaching him.
Yeah, he's opened up a massive gap of well, not massive, but it's getting there. 1.5 seconds at the line here. It's going to be to the 48 of Christian Antonio, and he's continuing to march away. Actually, the gap closed a little bit that time. Christian Antonio dropped it down to a 1.1. So that gap's starting to get a little bit smaller here, lap by lap. We'll keep an eye on that. And meanwhile, here come the 97 and number 9 of Chris Bass and Chris Tate through the field here on the back straightaway.
It looks like Chris Bass is having a little bit of connection issues. You see him blinking on your screen. Chris Tate, he's just got around Christopher Takeax for 6 spots, as Bass has worked his way up to 5th. A slow restart, but he's now starting to pluck his way through the field. He looks to be really the fastest car on the racetrack right now. If it's not him, it's definitely Chris Tate. And that's something Chris James is going to have to watch out for, as he has only been able to gap second place by about 1.2 seconds. So it's going to be very interesting to see, as you can put a blanket under 2nd through 5th.
So one thing we'll have to watch out for, Chris, here is as we see the 97 look to the inside of the 25 for 4th. Once these two get up to maybe 2nd and 3rd and start to maybe chase down Chris James, what kind of speed they still have after running up through the field. Obviously, they're running the cars pretty hard coming up through the field, and that's going to do a little bit of damage to that right front tire that we talked so much about here this afternoon so far. It'll be interesting to see if their pace maybe falls off a little bit once they've cleared this little group and start to chase down the 29.
For those of you just joining us, you're watching the Chris Cup Series here on Flatout Network. Chris Dollarden, Logan Brakey, bringing you the action tonight from Auto Club, the Chris Club 160, and we are just enjoying an excellent green flag run. We've had 3 cautions so far in the first half of this race, but a long green flag run is happening. Chris James is your leader, but right now he is really getting run down by the 97 and the 9 of Chris Tate, as they only got to navigate a couple more cars to get to him. Logan, man, they are just fast. They are just wicked fast.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by the pace that those two are showing this afternoon. They do seem to have hit a little bit of a roadblock now. Maybe it's the tire fall off that's starting to come in now that they've got the 83 and the 48 in front of them. They have seemed their pace has seemed to slow it a little bit. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how they fare getting by there. As we see the 97 looking to the inside now into turn number 3 for the 3rd spot. So it'll be interesting to see if they just kind of back off and let the race come to them at this point, now that they've made their way back up to the front, or do they continue their charge up to the 29?
If you want my opinion, I think they go for the 29. I mean, with it almost closing in at halfway, and the one thing I think that's really helping, 7-lap newer tires than the 2 leaders of a Christian Antonio and Chris, as Bass trying to peek to the inside of the 48, right up to the bumper of the 48, as he's going to try and get him here into 3. That is also a big factor. As the tire fall off is happening worse to Chris James and Christian Antonio than Chris Bass. So I'm thinking Bass and Tate are going just all out right now to run down. The 97 got the wall.
I didn't think that was going to work there. He tried to pull that move to the outside. I didn't think there was enough room. Doesn't look like there's too much damage there, but that's certainly going to hurt a lot of his momentum and maybe do a little bit of damage to that right front.
Big time mistake out of the 97 of Chris Bass. He rebounds quickly to take 4th place back. Almost cut the nose off of Chris Massey in the 83. After all that, Christopher Tate was able to spot as Christian Antonio continues to just manage himself and keeps on running in 2nd. But Chris Tate on those 7-lap newer tires, you got to think he's got the better car right now. And Antonio, if I'm him, I just let him go, as he's the one, as he would just be holding up anybody to go get Chris James. And if anything, Chris Bass hitting the wall, that was a blessing for Chris James, as he's still able to maintain the lead by about a second.
Pretty spread out here through the field now. Little couple single car battles all everywhere you look around the track, but for the most part, nothing too crazy. Pretty hectic battle here, I should say. Now back between P11 all the way back to about P14. Little bit of a pack forming up there, but so far all smooth and steady here for this long green flag run. We'll be interesting to see now, Chris, how the tires do really fall off for everybody here.
Absolutely, as everybody is pretty much into the double digits when it comes to put on their tires. Chris Tate and Chris Bass, other cars, Chris Stamper, Chris Otto, and a bunch of cars towards the mid-pack. You mentioned a few of them, Chris Thomas Faddis, Chris No, and Chris Scott, our pole sitter, along with Robert's guys that pit under our last caution. They have got the stuff right now. And I'll tell you who's got the stuff right now. That's Chris Tate, who's gotten around Christian Antonio for third, as he has cut that lead that Chris James had of about a second. He's about cut it in half.
Want to go back a little deeper in the field here for a moment, Chris. We had a car in the wall off of turn number 4. It was the 35 of Christopher Ritchie. Caught the wall off of turn number 4, and it shot him down into the infield grass. He did not spin. He was able to maintain and get back up on the track, but he did lose quite a few spots because of it. Obviously, no yellow came out, but a little bit of a moment there for him here this afternoon. Currently scored now in the 17th position, so it did cost him quite a bit of track position.
You said running 17th, trying to get the 16th spot from Chris Shepard is Christopher Ritchie. A little close there. The lap car of Christian Line off of turn number 4, so he's still trying to keep on trucking and get what he can as they are closing up at the front. Man, I thought Tate was going to get the wall off of 4. Antonio still hanging with him, though, up there in third, as they are really, really starting to run down the 29 of Chris James. And with all this happening, Chris Massey and Chris Bass is got himself into quite a battle here, about a 4-car race right now between Otto, Stamper, Massey, and Bass. That has allowed the top 3 to just scoot away from them as the gap is open to about a 3-second gap back to them.
Yeah, when you get battling side by side like that, obviously it's going to slow your pace down a lot, but especially if you've got two guys like the Christopher Tate and Christian Antonio kind of running single file and not really battling. They're sharing the draft off of each other down the straightaways, and they've used that to their advantage, and they've reeled in the 29 of Chris James now at this point. And it's interesting that something like that you would see at a super speedway like Daytona or Talladega works in the same way here at a track like Auto Club.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned there, as we are way past the halfway point now on working lap 44 of 80, 37 laps to go. This track likes to act like Daytona and Talladega. I said it, that you can run multiple lines at this track, and you can make just like Daytona and Talladega, as we're going to have a battle for the lead here. And here he comes, Chris Tate, fastest car on the racetrack at the stripe. He is going to just beat Chris James by about half a car length, and I think he's going to have that lead coming through 1 and 2.
I think he's going to try and the 48's going to try and go with him here. They're going to battle side by side, and that's going to open up the door for the 48 to get a little bit of a run down off of turn number 2 down the back straightaway. Maybe enough to look to the inside going into turn number 3.
Down the back straightaway they come. I put a blanket over the top 3. The 9 of Christopher Tate's taking the lead. Chris James, though, trying to take it back from him as Tate slams the door going through the corners.
29 really drove it into turn number 3 to try and get a nose back to the inside, but just didn't have enough to get there. 48's going to look to the inside off the turn number 4, and now move to the top.
Lot of good battling here at the front and even towards the back, as well as James tries again. Tate slamming the door on him. Christian Antonio just laying it for something to happen possibly as they come off of turn number 2 here, working lap 46, 35 laps to go here at Auto Club. As you see those guys further back like Chris Otto and Chris Stamper trying to make up for lost ground. But with these guys getting racy, that could be an option for them to run them down with these guys getting racy.
Starting to see a lot of different lines being formed here, Chris. Been looking back in the pack as the run goes on. I'm starting to see guys. Everybody's kind of the new bottom of the racetrack is about a lane up from the actual bottom, and so guys have kind of moved off that white line like we talked about early in the race. And they've moved about half a lane to a lane up. And I'm also seeing guys kind of run in that second groove or that second seam that you see in the corners to try and get a little bit of speed, a little bit of a run off the corner. Maybe be a less abrasive on the tires. The higher you run, obviously, the less abrasive you are on your right front. So obviously the leaders are still being very aggressive with a very, very low line through the corners. But back in the pack, guys are trying to make time with a little bit of higher lines through the four corners here.
Come down, they'll take lap 48 of 80. I want to point something out here. Christopher Williams is running 14th right now in the 42. He has still not made his first pit stop of the race. He is now on lap 48 on his tires. He has really stretched it. We're going to use him as the base as to how long these cars can go on a green flag run. And with him running like that, I would think that a lot of these guys that are on that pit under our lap caution could be on a one stop. I think just about everybody could be on a one stop at this point.
Just as a comparison, too, as far as lap times are concerned, our leader, Christopher Tate, this time ran a 42.6 at the line. And the 42's last lap was a 43.2. He's about to hit the line here this time. We'll see what he runs this time by. Looks like it's going to be a 43.3. So a little bit of about a second of fall off there between kind of the fresher tires on the racetrack and the old tires in the 42. So it's an interesting little perspective there. Not as great as of a fall off as I expected, though, Chris.
Yeah, it's very interesting as to why that fall off is only a second, as Christopher Williams is just proving to us here that he is really willing. He was really willing to take that risk, but the fall off is starting to pay the price for him as he's way back now in 14th. Christian Antonio still was able to get around the 29 of Chris James as he's moved into the second position now, as Christopher Tate has opened up about a half a second lead on these two guys running second and third.
Dropping back to the 97 of Chris Bass. I think that damage might have done a little more than we thought. It certainly slowed his pace down. He's now currently scored 7th place behind the 99 of Chris Tim No.
You mentioned Chris Tim No. He has really worked his way here through the pack. He's on the same lap time or pit times as Chris Stamper, Chris Otto, and our leader Chris Tate. He has really been able to have a lot of good long run speed, as he was just outside the top 10 last time we trying to run down Chris Stamper to get 5th.
Yeah, and we saw him involved in that big wreck off of 2, actually. He was the first car to get loose and get sideways and make contact, so a good recovery drive as well, as you pointed out for him there. And he's continuing his march up and currently scored in 6th, and he's continuing to track down the 81 in 5th right now.
The highest running of the Fords is Chris No, as the entire time. Tate in 1st, Christian Antonio 2nd, Chris James 3rd, Chris Otto 4th, and Chris Stamper 5th. You go 7th is Chris Bass. Our highest running Toyota is our pole sitter, Chris M. Scott 8th. Christopher Takax is 9th, and then our next Toyota in line is Chris Massey in 10th. So a Chevy-dominated field, currently Chevy-dominated top 10, as is still you can put a blanket over the top 3. You know, I just continue to watch here with Williams still not making his pit stop as to, I think these guys are just really running it to the finish. As I was going to say with the pits, here comes Chris Tate as he's going to bring it down into the pits, handing the lead to Christian Antonio.
That's a bold move. You normally don't see the leader as the first guy to come to pit road, but a bold strategy call here from the 9 car. Interesting to see how this pays off for him here in the long run. I was trying so hard not to quote a famous movie line there, but it almost slipped out of my mouth. So going to be interesting to see how that strategy plays out for the 9. I did see the 97 hit pit road with him as well as the 98.
97 of Chris Bass, you are absolutely right. With the 98 of Bears, they are all in, taking 4 tires and fuel. Green flag pit stops happening here at Auto Club in the Chris Club 160, as the 9 of Chris Tate's going to be able to get away and head back onto the racetrack. I said it handed the lead over to Christian Antonio as more and more guys are in the pits. Chris Otto, he is in the pits now. A lot of guys out of the top 10 we're just waiting and seeing. Whenever these leaders come into pit, there's the 9 as they pass by him to put him a lap down for the moment. If everything cycles out right, that 9 should be the leader, but we'll see how long Christian Antonio and Chris James decide to keep it out there, maybe hoping for a caution here in the final bits of this race.
Christopher Williams just hit pit road for his first stop of the race. Finally going to be able to get on some fresh rubber, so he's going to be able to see what kind of speed he has. He did overshoot his box a little bit, though. That's not what you want to do on a green flag stop. That will hurt him quite a bit. And looks like he's going to be the only taker on pit road this time by.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a mistake you do not want to make, and a bit of a prolonged pit stop for Christopher Williams. So that strategy he had of staying out as long as he did, maybe coming back to bite him as he had troubles in the pits. As you see, Chris No, he is in the pits now along with the 81 of Stamper. Still waiting to see who is going to come in and pit among our leaders. Christian Antonio and Chris James, when they'll come down, they're on 37 lap old tires and expired fuel, so we'll see, and we're going to keep an eye on them, and we'll also keep an eye on the guy who we think that would reassume the lead. That would be Chris Tate, who's currently, I'm trying to find his name here, he's currently in 10th, so it means about the top 9 have not pitted, so you got to watch out for that as Christian Antonio continues to pace the field.
Yeah, and Chris Tate just came out just ahead of our 2 current race leaders right now, which does lead me to believe that he would cycle out to be the overall leader once the entire round of pit stops does cycle through.
Man, here we go. Chris James, he's made the move. Road. There he goes. The second place car, Chris James in his Chris Weiser Chevy, has brought it down, and he could not go any further. I'm trying to see if anyone back there is going to be any takers with him. No, our pole take with him. That is not good for Chris James being the only car coming down pit road. He's going to be a little bit slower in terms of the draft to be up there with the leaders, but for the time being, Christian Antonio still has not brought it back down. I think he's hoping for a caution.
Yeah, and that's always a strategy too whenever we hit green flag pit stops for a lot of these guys is maybe stay out as long as you can, maybe get that caution and see if you can catch a break and pit while you've got a lot of the field trapped a lap down, and just kind of preserve that track position. But better to be safe than sorry and bring it down pit road now while you've got your competitors pitting under green. It's always best to play the safer card whenever you're running up near the front.
Basing off of Christopher Williams as Antonio down, I want to take a look. I'm trying to look here. Christopher Williams, I believe he pit, and he was on 54 lap old tires. If I'm doing the math right, Christian Antonio can go about another 14 laps without bringing it down into the pit. So he's got 14 laps to hope for a yellow before he has to come down and make a pit stop. But he's not going to even care about that. Is going to be coming down now to make his scheduled green flag pit stop that would hand over the lead, I believe, to Chris Massey, who has not made his stop yet. Not sure if he's going to come down with him as Antonio. You see him there heading down to the pits to make his green flag pit stop.
Looks like a little bit of nose damage on that 83 of Chris Massey, so might have to take some time under this pit stop to get that nose damage repaired as it is. And it'll definitely do some damage to him here. I can bet you he's fighting a pretty tight race car right now. That car is going to be struggling to punch through the air, especially down the straightaways, entering the corners. So we'll be interesting to see if he decides to get that damage fixed.
Right now, you are looking at your the guy who will take the lead, barring that we do not get a caution here in the next few laps whenever Massey, Thomas Faddis, and Noblet bring it down pit road. As Tate was able to get around Antonio off the pits, Tate has got about a 3-second lead over the eventual second-place car, Chris James, as, man, the 9 was going to get really slowed up there trying to get around the 18 of Chris Cody Jenkins, who's a lap down. But you're looking right at your who will be the leader whenever everything cycles around when our top 3 come to pit.
It's always a sketchy first couple laps when you come out of pit road and guys haven't pit just yet, and you're on the fresh tires. The closing right there is almost like you're in a different class of car. It's so immense, the closing rate. So it's sketchy when you come up on a big pack of cars that are on old tires compared to your new tires.
Chris Massey still out in front. Yeah, that front damage still probably going to be impending to him. He's on lap 43 of his based off of Christopher Williams. He's got about 11 more laps, and that would not get him to the finish. So he's just riding out there, hoping for a caution. But I'm looking at Chris Thomas-Faddis and Chris Noblet. If we do the math there, 18 lap gets them to the white flag. So that is something to remember. But with how fast Christopher Tate's going right now, I don't think that's going to even matter.
Yeah, this is it's a fair bet to say some guys are probably going to pull a strategy card and maybe try and make this to the end on tires. Fuel I don't think should be too much of an issue right now. Maybe if we get a green-white checkered, it's about 20 laps to go from this point. I think they're good to the end from here. I'm not sure what their fuel is. Whether or not they're on a full tank, I don't believe they are. However, the tire fall off now that the field is so spread out, Chris, I think is manageable if you're trying to stretch it to the end where you put yourself in a position that maybe is high risk, high reward. I think it's a little bit of more of a gamble that could pay off at this point in the race because of the distances on track between the cars.
It's an absolutely good point there you make, the fall off and everything. Chris Massey continuing to lead. Are you seeing something that I can't see?
Yeah, the 9 ran up really tight on the 17 off of turn number 4. It was just a big checkup that the 9 had to make. The 17's on a little bit older tires. I thought maybe he was going to get run over a little bit there, but Tate was able to check up in time.
I'm looking at Tate here. He got around Knob. So yeah, that strategy of trying to make it to the finish is fast Tate is running right now. He's got about 2 seconds, and he is closing quickly on the two guys of Chris Massey and Chris Thomas-Faddis as they're coming to the stripe now. Massey at the line there, and then Tate is just now on the exit of 4, trying to get around the lap machine, 7 of Chris Clifford Corvo, and he'll hit the line now as he is really closing.
Yeah, so maybe these two leaders, again, as you said, I don't see that they can make it to the end because they, as you said, they last pit, I believe on lap 27 was their last pit stop on that last caution. So there's no way they can make it to the end, but I think they're just trying to hold out for maybe that caution that could maybe save them and bring them back into the race, bring them back into contention for this, because as they run right now, they'd cycle out to maybe about mid-pack, 1 lap down, about maybe 18th or 19th.
Got about 15 cars on the lead lap right now. It's going to be 14 maybe in a moment. Christopher Ritchie hanging around Massey and Faddis right now. It's been a pretty exciting race. A lot of action in the opening part, but everything's spread out and calmed down now. So, I mean, I think it's safe to say right now with how big of a gap Christopher Tate has on the leaders, I think it's, or who, when he does eventually get to them, how he, I am flustered right now trying to get my words out. I apologize. He's got a good gap on Chris James, who would eventually be the second place car. So right now, I really think it's Christopher Tate's race to lose, but there's still a lot to happen.
So it does look like Chris Nobbett actually hit pit road 2 laps ago on lap 62. So he's currently scored in 4th position right now. So I think he would cycle out to be second behind Christopher Tate once this is all said and done. Chris James is back there just behind Chris Nobbett in what is currently 5th place, but would cycle out to be 3rd. So a really good stint here for Chris Noblet in that 17 as he's gained a ton of time and has really driven his way up into this top 3.
Meanwhile, up at the front, Chris Thomas-Faddis still is now the race leader. He was able to get around the see. So he's, like I said, he last pit at lap 25 of 80, which was our most recent caution of the race. We do the math with, I call it the Christopher Williams math. We got to thank him for running it out as long as he did, so we can actually get an idea of what the fuel window, entire window is. You do the math. When Williams pit with about 55 on his tires, man, that gets Faddis to the white flag. It's just I don't think he has the speed to hold off Chris Tate, who is continuing to close down on these guys.
Yeah, and we're coming up on 12 laps to go right now. Chris Tate's last time at the line was a 42.1. Our current race leaders was a 43.5. So quite a bit of differential there on lap time, over a second of fall off. And we saw the 83 of Chris Massey really high in 1 and 2. We actually get him now in the same shot there. Chris Tate is shown in the background there off of turn number 2. So they're on the same section of the track. So this looks, they look like they could be getting reeled in here by the time this thing's all said and done.
Faddis trying to just play the strategy card. It's a very bold move to make, as he thinks he can probably try and stretch it to the end. But the fact of him trying to save fuel, Chris Tate is just very, very fast. So Faddis doesn't really have an option right now to be able to either save fuel or save up his tires. As there he is. He is in the picture there right behind our ticker. I think just it's a ticking time bomb is what it is for Thomas Faddis and Chris Massey, as Christopher Tate is bringing it closer. And I'm looking further back. Chris James about 5.5 seconds behind Tate. So Tate really has this in the bag. It's still a lot of time. A lot of things can happen. Cautions could happen with a couple cars maybe even spinning towards the back of the pack. It's going to be very interesting to see. And one thing I want to pose to you, Logan, how hard do you think Faddis races Tate?
Yeah, I mean, he's not running hard at all right now because he's really trying to make it to the end, as we've pointed out. But he's also in the same sense that Christopher Tate is also running hard because he's trying to catch Faddis towards the end of this thing. He might not have the information that we have. He have no idea what kind of situation that Faddis could be in right now. So he's running just as hard to try and get to the 12. And maybe by the time he gets to him, his tires could be gone. So we could be looking at a very good battle at the end of this thing. His pace has slowed a little bit, a 43.3 last time by for Faddis and a 42.3 last time by for Tate. So that fall off has now decreased down to just a second. So we've got 10 laps to go, going to be 9 at the line. Faddis has got a little bit of a push from the lap car of Christian Shepherd. This could be very close at the end of this thing, Chris.
You mentioned Christian Shepherd. He's the first car 1 lap down. So you got to think, as he's actually going to go to the inside, he's going to let him go and become the last car on the lead lap. That's not good for Faddis to close even further. There he is, Christopher Tate, continuing to close in. He has got the gap down to inside a second here with 9 laps to go. I do not think Faddis has the stuff, and whenever Tate gets around him here, coming off the corner, Faddis is going to bring it down, as Massey already brought it down.
Whoa,
and wow, look at that closing rate.
Yeah, huge run off with turn number 2 for the 9. I thought maybe that the gap was really slowing down, but I think maybe the 9 just backed off a little bit to save his tires. Faddis got the apron a little bit in 1 and 2 and gave him a big wiggle off of 2. A very valiant effort, though. My goodness, from the 12. A fantastic performance he's put on. He could very well have second place locked up. I don't know if the 29 has enough time to reel him in for third. It's just a solid drive from that 12 machine.
Woo! The 44 got the wall there, going through 1 and 2. Tate, 8 laps to go here at Auto Club Speedway in the Chris Club 160 here on FRN. Oh man, Chris Tate, he has just put on a clinic since taking the lead on the after our last caution that happened way back at lap 25. Green flag pit stops worked out in his favor, and he is just pulling away from everybody else. His nearest true opponent would be Chris James. He's about 5.5 seconds back of the 9. So the 9 currently in cruise control right now, but a lot can still happen in these last 7 laps.
One guy we talked about a lot at the start of this thing, but haven't really touched on in the second half is the 97 of Chris Bass. We saw him get the wall in turn number 4 in the first half of this race on his charge to the front. He did fall back to 7th, but has now climbed up to 4th. So a good recovery drive there for him. Still some speed left in that 97 Chevrolet, so he's going to continue to try and close down on the 48 of Christian Antonio there for third.
Regardless of how this race pans out, this is a great bounce back. Chris James, after having heartbreak at Daytona, he's running in second right now, trying to do all he can to run down Tate. He's got the lead down to 5 seconds, but I just don't know if he's got enough time in the race to run down Christopher Tate. He's on 4-lap newer tires, so that's something to watch out for. I just don't know if he's got the time to run him down. And another great run this week for Christian Antonio. He's running up there in third. Good run for that young man in the 48. But Christopher Tate, 5-second lead over the front second and third place cars as he's coming through 3 and 4 to come and take 5 laps to go in his Chris Know-How machine. He is sitting pretty to come up with a win here tonight at Auto Club.
Yeah, and he certainly knew how to get the job done this afternoon here. 4 laps to go at the line here for Chris Tate. And what a very impressive drive he's put on this afternoon. He started all the way back, Chris, in 24th position. So it wasn't an easy day for him by any means. He definitely had to march his way through the field a couple times on those restarts. But we saw, a lot of strategy get played early in this race where a lot of guys would stay out at the front. And I think that definitely helped him on his march through the field. Those guys slowed up a lot of the cars that had fresh tires, and it made it a little easier for Tate to drive through the field. But this has been no small task here this afternoon for that 9 Chevrolet.
Some battling happening towards the outside of the top stamp for Chris Otto. Tim No is over here as well, as Otto got really loose there on the straightaway, trying to get around some lap traffic. A big gaggle of cars right here. Just battling to get as many points as you can. Just the second race of the season, but Christopher Pierce pointed out last week at Daytona that every point matters. So guys just trying to get what they can here as Stamper holds the 5th spot right now, trying to hold off the other cars behind him, Chris No and Chris Otto as well. Some action happening here down the stretch, but it is all about Chris Tate as he comes to the line. He will see 3 laps to go on the board here for him, as he's just got to make a few more turns and he'll be heading to victory.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, points are most easily gained at the beginning of the season. I'm the biggest one of the biggest preachers of that. If you can gain as many points as you can early on in the season, you've got a good shot at being around at the end of the season fighting for that championship. So every position matters here, and that's why you continue to see some fierce competition all over this racetrack right now. I want to point out that the 12 did eventually come to pit road. He's currently scored 1 lap down in the 18th position. So it was a very good effort from Chris Thomas Faddis there in that 12 machine, but just wasn't enough here this afternoon for him.
A valiant effort indeed for him. He tried to just run it as long. It's looking like he's going to end up in 17th tonight. A tough break for him, but he has a lot of season left to be able to rebound as the 9 continues to make his way around this racetrack down the back straightaway. He's got a 4.5-second lead over new second-place driver Christian Antonio. As you can just see him at the tail bit of the screen, but they are just running out of time as Tate comes through 3 and 4. When he comes down, he will see the white flag here in the Chris Club 160. In his Chris Know-How Chevy, he's run very well all night, started at the back. White flag in the air for Christopher Tate.
And that's the flag that he wanted to see with the lead that he's got. Nothing can be any spoil to his race now. It's just 4 corners left, and he'll be taking home that checkered flag here this afternoon. A fantastic drive for Christopher Tate.
Christopher Tate heading now down the back straightaway. Was running last week at Daytona. Saw him had flare-ups in the top 10. And fell off a little bit later on, but here today at Auto Club, he has shown that the moves and the strategy to get it done. Out of turn number 4, Christopher Tate in the number 9 Chris Know-How Chevy. He will take the checkered flag in the Chris Club 160. He wins tonight at Auto Club.
Christian Antonio, a solid drive, bringing home 2nd, and Chris James in 3rd. Solid effort from him. And a great rebound drive from the 97 of Chris Bass. He's going to bring it home 4th. Probably not the day he wanted with the speed he had, though.
Absolutely. He had the car early on that we all thought that he was just going to have a car to beat as how fast he was going on restarts, but the long run speed definitely favored Christopher Tate more, as both him and Bass were on the same pit strategy. You see Chris James there running up behind the 9 to give him a congratulations. Great rebound for Chris James after his upset issues at Daytona. But Christopher Tate, he's going to bring it down here in the grass, and he's going to burn it down here at Auto Club here in the grass. Great run tonight for Christopher Tate. Dominated the back half of this race, and he burning it down. He definitely deserves this one tonight.
Yeah, a very hard-fought victory, as you said, and as I touched on too, he had to drive his way through the field. Started in 24th. Really had a heck of a drive here all afternoon, and finally, he really didn't show his dominant performance until these green flag pit stops, until they started cycling through. So he really didn't show what kind of true speed he had until he got up in the front late in the race. Parks it in victory lane, and he's ready to celebrate.
He is in victory lane. A great run for him. I want to give a call to a couple other guys. You see him right there, Christopher, running by him by victory lane. 10th place for him tonight. Good rebound from Daytona. Chris Robert in 9th. He got a good run tonight. Chris Otto, 8th, involved in some wrecks, but he was able to rebound. Chris No, someone who didn't take the green flag at Daytona, he starts his season on a note in 7th, and Chris Stamper in 6th as well. You'll get to see your full finishing results here in just a moment. Christopher Tate is your winner. We'll talk to him in a minute, and our other second place and third place finishers, Christian Antonio and Chris James, as you'll get to hear from them in just a moment. If you would implore us, we'll get that set up for you. We'll be right back here on FRN, and Christopher Tate getting ready to celebrate. Back here at Auto Club Speedway here. Christopher Tate, your race winner here tonight in Chris Club 160. We'll give you your results right here. Your finishing results this evening, Christopher, the winner. Right now, we got Chris James in here. 3rd place run for you tonight in your Chevy. How did it feel out there for you tonight, running up there with everybody?
It was a little scary at first. I guess everyone had some early race jitters. I don't know really what was going on there. And then right before that long green flag run, I chose to stay out because I thought we were going to have another quick caution. That did not happen. That turned out to play a role. And then it just got tight. This place was eating up tires.
Logan, you have anything for him?
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned it at the start. Everybody was really racy at the start. We saw maybe about 7 or 8 cars. You could almost throw a blanket over them battling up there for the lead on that start, on that first about 9-10 lap green flag run. And then that first caution came out, and then we went back to the restart, and everybody kind of just settled in and filed in line. Did you guys kind of figure out that maybe, hey, we shouldn't race so hard at the start because it kills that right front?
I think the people that it killed figured it out. I'm not sure what to say. I was just trying to. I think I had a real close call. I think I almost got taken out on turn one in one of them, and I don't think there was a caution on that particular one. But I was just trying to save it, do as good a job as I thought I would. But I can't be mad at a P3. I'll take it. Good point stay.
You mentioned it. It's a very good points day. If I remember there at the end at Daytona, if I'm remembering, you were the right one there front. So this is a very good rebound week for you here at Auto Club.
Yeah, last week did not go as planned. I think I got caught up in a big one there at the end. So this definitely helps our chances.
Before we let you go, is there anybody you want to?
Yeah, shout out to you guys in the booth. Y'all did a great job. Chris Jones for putting on this crazy league of Chris's. We have a lot of fun saying, I bet Chris is going to wreck Chris, or Chris calls the big one every week, and that doesn't get old. Shout out to Christian Antonio's kind of become my running mate. Oh, and good job, Chris, staying on the win. Good job, bud.
All righty, Chris James, our third place finisher tonight. Great run for you, sir. Hope for another good one next week.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
We will now get Christian Antonio, our second place finisher, up into the broadcast booth. An excellent run for him. There he is, Antonio. Second place run for you tonight here at Auto Club. How did it feel out there for you tonight?
It felt pretty well. Wanted to go for the win, but car got really tight and decided to play the pit strategy a little bit too not in my favor. Wanted to pit 2 laps after the leader came in, but I decided to gamble, go 4 laps more, and that kind of hurt us at the end of the day.
Christian, you were one of the guys that were kind of battling up there at the very start of this race. There was a whole group of 7 or 8 of you that we could just throw a blanket over, racing really, really hard on that first that opening stint there before that caution. And I asked this to Chris James a moment ago, but I'm going to ask you the same thing. Did you maybe did you kind of learn anything from that first run in regards to how abrasive this track is on that right front when you're racing so hard in a pack like that, and kind of settled you down in that second run?
Oh yeah, definitely. This track is very abrasive. It's probably one of the most difficult tracks, especially this being 2 miles in length, especially being this bumpy. And it's something where you got to take into consideration that you don't want to race people that early. This is the type of tracks where you want to go slow and fast out, which I always let the fast guys go around me. Like, they can race it, they can burn their right front out at the end of the day, and like 10, 15 laps, I'm going to catch them back up and pass them, and they're not going to be able to have a chance to come near me.
Christian, you had we saw you last week having some good moments up inside the top 10 at Daytona. I can't quite where you ended up finishing at Daytona. Second place tonight, I think that's definitely a big rebound for you.
Oh no, we got P3 last week in the Daytona with late race caution and everything. Wanted to win here at the home track, but we couldn't get it done. But I'll still take a P2. Looks good, a good day for a points battle right here. We'll look forward to next week though. Can't wait to see what's next.
I apologize. I was in here last week, and yeah, we interviewed you too. So I don't know what I blanked on. So, yeah, that's right. You did end up P3. You know, with you got to think about this. Chris Adam Tempest did not take the green flag tonight. You very well be our points going into next week.
Oh no, definitely. Like, I wonder what happened to him. I would still like to see him race more. I wish he still comes around. I want to battle out for points at the end of the day. I don't want to be just like have no one for show. These guys are great racers. All these other Chris's, they put a hell of a fight. At the end of the day, I just want to have a fun week with everyone.
Absolutely. Logan, you have anything else for him?
I'm good.
All right. Before we let you go, Christian, anybody you want to thank?
I'd like to thank everyone. Thank Chris Jones for the race and everything. Thanks for you guys in the broadcast booth calling out the shots. And all my other competitive Chris's. We'll see them next week.
Absolutely. Christian Antonio, third place at Daytona, second place tonight at Auto Club. Very well could be our points leader going into Las Vegas next week. Christian, thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Tristan.
All right, we have got our race winner in here. Christopher Tate, man, you put on quite the clinic in the back half of this race. You and your fellow driver, Chris Bass, definitely had the faster cars tonight, but you ended up being the faster.
Yeah, I was
I want to
worried.
get your intake.
I was worried that I was gonna have to compete with him for like the top spot for a while, but after he hit the wall, that was a close one. I'm glad I didn't hit him, but I was a little bit worried that the race was gonna keep just going caution, caution, caution. So I just pit it. I just went in the pits, hope for the best, and it ended up working.
Chris, we saw you had to kind of make a charge at the 12 late in that green flag run with about maybe 10 or 8 laps to go. Were you aware of the situation that the 12 was in? Did you know he had to come back in and take 4, or were you expecting him to try and maybe stay out to the end and maybe that you were going to have a little bit of a fight on your hands come down to the finish of this thing?
I was actually listening to the broadcast while I was racing, so I heard everything. But before I pit, I looked at my fuel and I realized I was like 8 laps short, and I didn't think they could save that much, so I figured he'd have to pit sometime. But I went ahead and just went all out 40 ways to try and catch him before, just in case the caution did come out. But luckily, that all worked out too.
Well, we're happy we could provide you with some little insider information there that could help you get the job done today. Not to take away from your excellent drive this afternoon. You started 24th and obviously taking home the checkered flag this afternoon. We saw a lot of guys up at the front early on in the race. Maybe they stayed out a couple cautions and took a couple restarts on some pretty old tires. Do you think that helped you in your charge through the field at all? Did that make it any easier knowing that there was some slower traffic slowing maybe some of the faster guys down for you?
I think it definitely played a factor, but I felt I was confident enough to get back to the gas sooner than a lot of them, so I could get a good run off the corners and pass them. But on that last restart, actually, I did get a little bit of damage because I tried taking it 3 wide and got hit in the left front and kind of set me up the hill. So I think that kind of hindered my ability to go through the field like I wanted to. But I think the tires helped me on the other end of that to actually still get up there and pass the leader.
Now, Christopher, you go from Daytona to Auto Club. You have Las Vegas next week, a little bit of a different track from these last two. Said throughout this course of the evening that this track of Auto Club drives a lot like Daytona. Las Vegas is a little bit different. What's going to be your mindset going into Vegas next week?
Just practice, know your lines, and try to stay out of trouble and get the win.
There you go. You know, you love to hear just a short and subtle thing, but it carries a long way. That Las Vegas. So, great run for you tonight, Christopher Tate, getting the win. Anybody you want to thank?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for putting on these great broadcasts, and Chris Jones for setting up this whole league. It's been pretty fun, and really just everyone participating.
All righty. Thank you very much, sir. Christopher Tate, your race winner tonight in his Chris Know-How number 9 machine. Good run for you tonight, bud.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
That is about going to wrap it up for us here from the Auto Club Speedway. Logan, any final thoughts you have as we head to next week?
Yeah, just a fantastic race overall. There was a lot of action at the start of this thing, and then we saw some typical Auto Club racing here in the second half with the long green flag run and the green flag pit stops there. The strategy calls coming into play, and looking for kind of a similar situation next week, maybe a little bit of an exciting start at Las Vegas. It's a pretty high-speed track, but it's also very, very narrow too, so could spell a lot of trouble for a lot of guys if something big were to happen early. So it should be a very exciting race next week.
You're absolutely right. It's going to be a lot of fun. Vegas, the whole roll the dice at a track like Vegas. This is going to be very fun to watch. Logan, I want to thank you for jumping on with me tonight, Brock.
Yes, sir. Happy to be up here with you. I was bummed I had to miss Daytona, but happy to be up here with you this time and looking forward to it next week.
As we have said, we are in Las Vegas next week. You will catch that race here on the Flatout Racing Network. But folks, again, don't go away from the Flatout Racing Network. Fantastic race for you tonight. The FTF Racing League's Grand National Series, presented by Splash and Go Graphics, is at Talladega tonight. In race 11 of 31 on their season. That coming up at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Don't go away. We'll be back, or they'll be up having a lot of fun over at the high banks of Talladega in the FTF Racing Leagues. But for right now, from Auto Club Speedway in the Chris Cup Series, I'm Chris Dollarden. Thank you, Logan Brakely, again for jumping on with me, and thank you to everyone who here at FRN who is able to allow these opportunities for us to happen. Thank you so much to them, and we will see you next week in Las Vegas for the third race of the season in the NASCAR Chris Cup Series. Once again, for Logan Brakey, I'm Chris Dollarden, signing off here on the Flatout Racing Network. Goodbye and have a pleasant tomorrow.